Hello, hello, hello. Guest requests on. People pulling up. People show up. Where you at, homies? Oh, guys, did y'all see the UK elections? See what happened in the UK elections? Serving. The Greens got 4 people, which is actually such a W. Such a massive W. We're gonna have 4 Greens. Trump torches Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who's behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck. I have nothing to do with them. That's just untrue. I mean, we know it's untrue, but whatever. He's worked with the Heritage Foundation before. Extensively. So he knows who the Heritage Foundation is. I mean, he may have forgotten because he's mentally inept, but he has worked with them. Guest requests are on. Let's get moving. What? Do you view Jewish people as lesser people than those from Palestine? No, of course not. Are you kidding me? Also, there are Jews from Palestine. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. You losing my mind? Hello. Oh, okay. 150 people. Yay. Send guest requests if you disagree with me. If you don't disagree with me, don't disagree with me. I am certainly friends with Parker and Dean. I don't know Harry that well, but I should, in fairness. Thank you so much for the gifts. That boosts the live quite a lot. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think Biden should sit this one out as well. What about a 2-state solution? What about it? I think a 2-state solution in the interim to calm everyone down for a second. But then beyond that, 1 state, baby. What do I mean there are Jewish people from Palestine? I don't see what's confusing about that. There have been Jewish people from, Palestine for as long as it's been there. Can Arabs and Jews actually live in 1 state? Yeah. They've lived comparatively peacefully in many, many states together. Under the Ottomans, they were quite peaceful, compared to now. Under a series of places, yeah. Keep on sending likes, everyone. Thank you so much. We're moving. Sure, but there are Jewish Palestinians have now just become Israelis. Not fully, actually. There's still a lot of racism towards...
So I'll take issue with the sort of Jewish Palestinian claim. Now, I want to be very clear what you mean by that. Do you mean that now in 2024 there is a population of people who are both Jewish but also lack Israeli citizenship and live in the Palestinian territories?
I mean, my original claim is that there have been Jewish Palestinians for as long as basically Palestine as an entity has existed. That's the claim that I made. If you're asking me a new question, does a person exist who does not have Israeli citizenship, is Jewish, and identifies as Palestinian? Yes, there are.
Well, I was asking about a community of those people, like a significant, relevant, sizable number of people do that, as opposed
I
to
mean, the vast majority of them have been co-opted either by Israel directly, have been mistreated to the point of expulsion, but that wasn't really that wasn't really what I was saying. But yeah, there are Jews in Palestine. So there are Jews in the West Bank. There are Jews living in the Palestinian bits. There are Jews in East Jerusalem. Right, there are Palestinian Jews. Gaza Strip has been pretty cohesively expelled of Jewish people, which is horrendous. But there are also Jewish Palestinians who have Israeli citizenship, right? So there are a lot of people that consider themselves Palestinian, but have Israeli citizenship because they were offered it following the Nakba because they were Jewish. Or they were completely co-opted and they were not expelled, but their area got taken in by Israel during the Nakba.
Sure, they assimilated and they assimilated into broader Israeli society.
Well, not assimilated.
They were
just got
folded into the
citizenship.
nation.
assimilated is a bit of a stretch. There it was attempted assimilation, sometimes successful, but not unilaterally.
I would say it's mostly been successful. There aren't really that. I mean, most of the anti-Zionist Jews are the Orthodox in
I
Israel.
wasn't talking about anti-Zionist or Zionists. I mean, there are Zionist Palestinians. I think they're insane, but that
I mean,
wasn't
would
a
you say a
two-state
two-state solution is Zionist?
What?
Isn't just a two-state solution Zionist? Because if that's the case, then Fatah is Zionist.
I mean, it depends which definition you're talking about. So Zionism, as it's currently defined, is like support for the current state of Israel, and that can be interpreted as the current state of Israel as it regards its current land claims. In which case, yeah, like not really Zionist, but like it's not that type of binary. It describes a set of ideas. It's not terribly helpful to be like you are or not. Like we're talking about a set of ideas, right? And then people fall within somewhere in relation to those ideas.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely take some disagreement with your assertion of a Palestinian Jewish community existing right now. I don't.
I didn't make that assertion.
Okay. Well, then that's I misunderstood your words then, and I apologize. Regarding the idea that Jews and Arabs can live together now, I
Wasn't
think
the
it's
assertion
a
either.
well, the idea that they can. I think it's certainly a nice idea, though. I don't think you want to invoke the Ottomans because the implication is that they can live together, but they can't rule themselves together. They need to
That
be
wasn't
ruled
the
by an outside.
implication. I was just citing a place where they did, in fact, live comparatively peacefully together.
Yeah, but that required an
That
outside
doesn't
power.
necessarily bring in all of the connotations regarding the Ottomans. It's just a true fact, right? And we can talk
No,
about
it's true, but
consequences
it
of it.
required the Turks to rule them
No, it
from
just
the
happened
outside.
to have the Turks ruling them.
I mean, if you don't think that that was that helped, you know.
We can talk
Also,
about whether it helped, but
there
it
was
certainly
no.
didn't require. And also, my argumentation regarding the Turks didn't require it either. Once again, I
No,
just don't want to muddy the waters. You're adding a lot of things into the assertions and claims, and they're not. It's just not
Well,
true.
it's that I'm saying that if someone asks, can they all live in one state, and your answer is, oh, they did under the Ottomans. Well, they did, but that's because they were basically held down by the Turks. If someone wanted to say the British, we should bring back they lived together during the Mandate, or that Palestine was a state during the Mandate period, that's sort of like saying, yeah, but that would require bringing the British back. It's why I think that
No,
if
we're
there is
talking
going to
about
be a
like
one state,
conceptual
it would
ideas.
require.
You can say, look, that was. You could make this argument. Look, that only worked because there was an external force, right? You would make that argument. That's not brought into. the
I am
argument.
making that argument.
Great.
That's
then
my
make that
response
argument
to your.
full force. Don't say that it's an
your claim.
implication of mine. It's not my actual claim. My point was,
No,
look,
well,
it's
this is
not. It's not like fundamentally impossible that they live together. We can talk about the differences, right? The Turks are different people. The current Palestinians are just different peoples than the previous Palestinians. The current Jewish population in Israel is just different people. Like, obviously, situations are different, right? But when you're saying, look, is it possible for them to live together? Yes, we know it is possible, right? And then we can talk about the
Yes, just not
necessary
independent.
requirements.
Just
What?
not with self-rule. Yes, just not.
But that's your view.
yes.
That's your argument. I mean, we can talk about the implications and
Well,
requirements.
I'm just criticizing your example of the Ottomans example. I would
No,
say
that was
that
a bad
a
criticism.
one-state
It doesn't
solution is
actually
also
stand.
very unlikely. What?
But that criticism of the Ottomans doesn't stand because my point was not that we should recreate the Ottomans. My point was that on a fundamental level, it's not impossible. That was the question.
Sure, it's not
Can they
not
live together?
impossible, but
yes, period.
it does require oversight. And I honestly think in general that
That's once
area
again
should.
your argument and your view. That's fine. I want to be
Fine,
very
then I'll tell you my
your
view.
criticism of my quote argument is not a criticism, right? We can have a different argument about how to do it now, right?
So, do you think that the people of that area are capable of self-rule together?
Currently,
Sure.
in this very moment, no.
Okay. Do you think they would be ever in the future? Oh,
Oh yeah, 100%. I do think they would.
all right. Do you think that what? So, you believe that they would be in the future? I'm skeptical of that. I mean, I find a two-state solution to probably be the best answer. I don't think that the Arabs and Jews could live together in a single state for like that. I don't think that the Israelis will want to give up the Jewish state, and I don't think the Arabs. Well, I don't think the Arabs would take too kindly to living in a Jewish state where they were not equal citizens. And I don't think that the Israelis would ever give up the Jewish nature of Israel.
Once again, yeah. Um, I will invoke like there have been lots and lots of what's strange about this is there have been truly so many expulsions of Jewish people from so many places where they now live, right? So there's a really big population, or a comparatively big population, of Jewish people in England now, where there was previously massive pogroms in England and a state enforced expulsion in England. There's a comparatively large population of Jewish people within Spain and within Portugal, where there was pogroms and massive expulsions. There's still hate and there's still anti-Semitism, of course, but they do live together and they do have equal rights. And the idea, if we went back during Inquisition times or something, and we were having this discussion, and you came up to me and were like, "Oh, do you think the Spanish and Jewish people could ever live together?" I'd be like, "Yeah, probably at some point, because like people change and like states develop and like ideologies to have a turnover rate of about one generation." And so when you're talking about this, I don't see really what's special about this in history.
Well, I would say that those aren't very good examples because in those situations, the Jewish people were a diasporic one. I think that a better example would be Bosnia, because Bosnia is more like this context than, say, England was, because the Jewish population of England was always incredibly low. They did not inhabit large tracts of land like they do in Israel. In Israel and Palestine, this is two different groups wish to occupy the same land, and they wish to build up a nation for themselves in that same
I
territory.
disagree that it's
Similarly
distinct
to
from each other.
Bosnia. What?
I mean, there are multiple different groups with distinctive identities within that area.
Sure, but there are two main national claims, the Jewish national claim and the Arab national claim.
Sure.
Similarly to the Bosnians, right? Or that there were Serbs, Bosniaks, and Croats. And they all sought to inhabit the same land and they engage in expulsions of each other. Now, Bosniaks, Serbs, and Croats all live under a single state, but that single state is obviously not independent. It requires extreme levels of oversight by the European Union and the United Nations. And in fact, there is someone who is essentially a non-Bosnian who's appointed by the Germans who can veto anything they want. Basically, they had to take away their self-rule.
But once again, this is the thing, is the example you point to is something that is obviously and explicitly, right, in a transitionary state. Which we could talk about what it takes to go to a place where you can't to where you can have self-determination. Right? And that's where the Bosniaks and Bosnia and Herzegovina are right now, and that's true. But the exact example you bring up is exactly my point. The intention for Bosnia and Herzegovina is to eventually be entirely self-ruled, and they're working explicitly towards that. And they've had success with trustee states in the past of that. Can you stop? Your microphone's like horrible. Can you stop moving it? I don't know why you're moving it. Okay. But Bosnia and Herzegovina is a great example. Different people with different ideas, different cultural backgrounds, different religions, living together under what is effectively a trust territory of the EU and UN, right, towards the eventual goal of self-determination of the people in a secular, democratic, liberal state. Great, yeah. That's what they're doing. And it's working pretty well.
Well, except for the fact that the Serbs are pro-Russian. They're a pro-Russian ethnic group.
When we're talking about Bosnia and Herzegovina, right, we can
yeah,
talk
they're still
about how well
pro-Russian
it's
there,
working
which is why
democratically.
they have a very schizophrenic foreign policy. Or not even schizophrenic. It would be schizophrenic if they let them take a foreign policy position, which fortunately the EU does not let them do. In regards to will they ever be able to, maybe. Though, so if you believe that there can be a single state that includes both Arabs and Jews, and that the Arabs nor the Jews will not object to it, do you actually think that is able to be implemented when one of those states has nuclear weapons?
Yeah, when the other one's being supported by states that have nuclear weapons, yeah.
Well, Israel has nuclear weapons.
And, I mean, if Palestine is supported by the BRICS coalition, then they will as well. At least by proxy.
Well, I mean, the BRICS are mostly pretty friendly with Israel too, with the exception of South Africa.
BRICS?
Russia and
Iran?
China are absolutely aligned with
Iran?
Russia and Israel. Iran? No, not Iran. China and Russia, who actually have nuclear weapons.
China and Russia? Russia
Yes.
does not support Israel. In what way are they friendly?
Well, for one thing, Russia, and Israel have
Russia,
a lot of
just for
population
context,
transfers.
Russia supplies missiles to Iran directly for use in Israel.
Yes.
Oh.
Oh, I'm not saying that they're particularly friendly allies, but Russia recognizes Israel, and they're
Yeah,
part of
that's why they were trying to
Netanyahu
be
in
friendly
specifically
with
is
the
probably
EU.
fairly. And when you compare Netanyahu to past Israeli prime ministers, he is fairly pro Putin.
But in what
There's a
world
reason
is
why
Russia
Israel would
friendly
not
with
take a hard
Israel?
line in
But
Ukraine.
this is just so incredibly wrong. China is not friendly with Israel. They do some trade with Israel, but they're quite antagonistic towards it to maintain their
They do
relationship
quite a
with
bit of
Iran.
trade with Israel, actually, and in fact, they have quite a bit of
Iran is one
presence
of the
in
most
Israeli
sorry,
society.
but
They're not
that's just
antagonistic.
let's take your claim at its word. You said, with the exception of South Africa, the rest of them are pretty friendly with Israel. Did you just forget that Iran was a core ally in BRICS?
Sure, I forgot Iran, but Iran too. Yeah, sure. I mean, BRICS itself is not a particularly strong alliance. I mean, India and China are in the same alliance. Can you believe that? They fucking hate each other. I can't think of two countries that have been so close to nuclear war as the Chinese and the Indians.
The
Right?
Indians,
BRICS
the
is not a
Pakistan.
particular. The Pakistanis, the Pakistanis know what the Indians will do, and they haven't had as often, I would say. And the Pakistanis are basically a Chinese asset anyway at this point. Worst ally we have, probably even worse than the Israelis. I think we should
This
just
is
cut
some
the
really
Pakistanis dry.
back of the napkin foreign policy going on. But okay, yes, I think it's as to the question. Yes, at least insofar as Iran will likely be a nuclear power within the next 10 years. Did my camera go big?
No.
Okay, slay. At least insofar as Iran will probably be a nuclear power, at least within the next 10 years, might already be, and is one of the biggest anti-Israel people in the world. So yeah, I mean, there will be nukes on both sides, and I think it'll be like most other proxy wars in the world.
So your hope is that Iran goes nuclear and can
No, that's
basically.
not my hope. Well, I didn't say that.
Oh, okay. So your prediction is that the Iranians will go nuclear
Oh
and
yeah. I predict
push
that
and
Iran's
push the
I
Israelis
think they
on
already
to
are,
the.
probably.
Well, I guess the Republicans were. I guess they were right about Obama.
Wasn't it Trump that pulled out of the Iranian nuclear deal?
Well, I think that was bad, right? I think that was
Yeah,
stupid.
yeah.
But the idea is
Like
that if they were going to
100%
go
Trump's
nuclear
fault.
anyway.
No, I don't think they were going to go nuclear anywhere. I think the Iranian nuclear deal was working pretty well.
Well, sure. So your view is that the Iranians will go nuclear, and that the Israelis, and that this will force the Israelis to accept essentially.
Once again, you're adding a lot
Giving
of words
over
in
their
my mouth. Don't do
independence.
that. It's really annoying. No.
Okay, well, what do you think will happen?
I've already told you. That's just not what I said. What you asked me a very
well,
specific
I
question.
You
just
just disagree with your view that the Israelis will simply give over their independence.
So
I disagree with your view that the Israelis will just give over their independence.
I didn't. That wasn't my view. Don't make shit up. Like, stop. This is an annoying way to speak. I said that I said that number one, it is possible for them to coexist in one state solution. And then you asked me, do you think that if there are these two groups, that it is possible with Israel having nukes? And I said yes, because the Palestinian coalition will probably have nukes as well. Those are the two questions I answered. How we get to that point, we have not covered. Right? I believe that it should go through some international trusteeship, right, on both sides, a dismantling of extremism on both sides. That would be great. Preferably like an Arab state coalition, whoever we could pull in, having a trustee state, working to develop into a.
Oh, I don't want them anywhere near it. It has to be a Western power. It has to be a Western power.
That's insane behavior. That's
Ideally,
insane.
it could either be maybe an Eastern power, maybe the Chinese could do it, but God forbid the Arabs do it.
Why?
I don't think they would treat the Jews very well.
What if we put it in Iran? Iran has constitutional protections for Jews.
Iran, no, no. Iran is a theocracy. No.
What is their historical treatment of Jews within the past 20 years?
Um, do you really want to give over control of how many Jews live in Israel? 7 million? 7 million under
Well,
the
see,
control
I'll
of a
ask you, what
theocratic
is their
state?
historical treatment of Jews compared to, I mean, England or America's or Germany's, God forbid?
In the last 20 years, America has treated Jews far better in the last 20 years than Iran has in the last 20
Let's
years.
go back. Let's go back 100 years. Let's go Germany and
100
Iran.
years?
100
America's
years.
still better
Germany,
than
Iran.
Iran on Jewish people 100
The
years.
question that I asked: Iran, Germany. Who
Well,
treated
yeah, but the
Jews
German,
better?
obviously the Iranians were better than the
What about the
Nazis. Yes,
French?
the Holocaust is bad. I believe it
Okay.
happened too.
But also regarding Iran, what is their current human rights track record on Jews
On Jews specifically, on the
compared to
few that are
China?
left,
Compared to
compared
China?
to the Chinese, well, it's mostly that the Chinese don't have a particular interest
Answer
in
my
it. Obviously,
question.
the Chinese
Answer
government
my
is
question, brother.
the Chinese government is worse on human rights than Iran, sure, but that's because but the
Regarding
Chinese also
regarding
don't
Jewish
have an
people
interest
specifically.
on Jewish people. There aren't really that many Jews in China, are
There
there?
were, there were.
Sure, there were, but I don't think that it's a very good look to try to defend China or Iran against
Once
Britain.
again,
I think Britain would be
I'm
a
not
far
defending
better
either.
group to rule
I'm
it.
just trying. I'm just trying very clearly to set out the actual reality of what you're doing. I'm setting out facts, and then I will make my argument and defend who I want to defend.
So
Don't
here's why I
read
think the
into it.
Chinese would be better than the Iranians. The Chinese do not have a particular ideological interest in what happens there. The Chinese have shown they can work with the Israelis and the Arabs. They can work with both. They're not particularly antagonistic against either group, either, I would say. I don't believe that it's accurate to say that the Chinese are anti-Zionist or against this existence of Israel. I would say that the Chinese, I don't
I mean,
want the
they called
Chinese there.
Israel
I would
like
much
a
rather the
Western
Americans there or a
colonial
European
product.
power there. I don't want the Chinese
I mean, you're
expanding their
wrong.
tentacles.
Like Xi Jinping has called their Israel Western colonial product. But,
Yet he has not revoked his recognition of Israel.
I actually don't know what the current recognition of China regarding Israel is. China, I think they recognize it.
They recognize both.
Formally established diplomatic relations, de jure recognition in 1948, lost it. Chinese-Israel relations, let's see. I don't think it's the same as America's.
Well, China recognizes Palestine and Israel,
Yeah,
but they're
which
not
is
anti.
quite antagonistic towards the current Israeli regime because they don't recognize
It's,
Palestine.
I think that you put a lot
Also,
more
he called
stock
it-
in that than
once
actual
again,
trading
once again,
relations.
he called Israel a Western colonial product. The PCR stated, oh yeah, the PCR supported that the UN resolution that called Zionism a form of racism. So, okay, your view, the actual argument you seem to be making is a semi-cogent one, which is that Iran, as a religious theocracy, as an Islamic theocracy, has a ideological weight in this like dynamic, right?
And geopolitical. I don't want a secular Arab power there either.
Yeah, and
I don't want the
political, 'cause
Syrians there.
They have Arab like solidarity. And so you don't think they could be overlooking some type of partitioned trustee state where they have to work peacefully with the Jewish state? Cool.
No.
Do you not think that like Westerners see Israel as Westerners as well?
They do, but they're probably more sympathetic
why
to
does
them than
that
the
not
Arabs
risk
or
the same thing?
the Iranians are.
But wait, why does that not risk the same worry?
Oh, it does. I just
But you
trust the
white
West
people
more. I
than
trust
Arabs.
Westerners more. I trust Western powers more. Yeah.
Why?
We're democratic.
Have we historically used our foreign policy to support democracies?
In East Asia,
Like
in
basically
depends
ever?
on where you go. In Eastern Europe,
Okay, I mean, let's talk about Iran. Did we support democracies in Iran?
not against Mossadegh. No, I'm not saying it's perfect, but I am not going to pretend that they're
Do
the
we
same.
currently support democracies in Jordan or Saudi Arabia or the UAE or Qatar or Kuwait?
I don't think you can equate the Jordanians with the Saudis.
I didn't.
I'd say support for the Jordanians is probably as good as you're going to get in that part of the world.
That's not what is the Jordanians a democracy?
They're democratic. They're more democratic than the surrounding Arab states.
Not true. I mean, the Iranians are much more democratic.
They're
than
not
Jordanians.
Arab. They're not
I'm
Arab.
talking Middle Eastern in general.
Oh, well, the most democratic country in the Middle East, excluding the bugaboo, is who? Cypriots, Lebanese, North Cypriots,
Yeah, depends how you want to consider them. Lebanese
Northern Cypriots, probably.
is not a functional state, but so
No,
I mean,
so
the thing is America may be a democracy. We can talk about the efficacy of American democracy, but in foreign policy, we have not supported democracies historically. Very, very rarely, right? We've actually toppled way more democracies than we've supported. We've toppled most democracies.
Sure, but that doesn't suddenly mean that we can't tell a difference between.
So I'm just so intrigued. In what world do you believe that the West would suddenly change their whole entire tune and start supporting democracy with their foreign policy? Is it just like literally to me? And I want you to defend yourself from this because everyone watching this seems to agree with this view. It just seems to be that you trust like white people more than Middle Easterns. Like that seems to be the validating factor because there's no historical
I mean,
basis
ideally, it
for
wouldn't be Americans either. Ideally, it would be UN garrisoned by like Irishmen, Nigerians, Koreans. Those
You don't
would
think
seem
that
to
the
be the
Irish
groups.
have an ideological like weighing here?
The Irish are inconsistent. Swedes,
The
then
Irish
maybe
have
there's the
literally
Swedes.
funded the fucking PLO.
Yeah, well, I said inconsistent. Well, that was the
been
IRA,
pretty
not
damn
the Irish
consistent.
government.
I mean, wait, sorry. Who's a majority in
The IRA is a terrorist organization.
Okay, who was the majority in the Irish government right now?
In the Irish government right now, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and the Greens.
No, who has a plurality in the Irish government?
Sinn Féin.
Sinn Féin.
Well, they're not
Fascinating.
in government, but
What was Sinn Féin a part of?
a terrorist organization that killed children intentionally.
Wild, incredible. And within the next election, I'm willing to bet that Sinn Féin will get a majority, quite honestly.
That's fine. I mean, they're not terrorists anymore.
I mean, I'm just talking about ideology. Pretty similar ideologies. If we talk ideologically, especially regarding Israel, not a fan. You don't think that them being like, a former freedom fighting organization against colonial
Well, no. I'm not talking. No. When I said the Irish, you misunderstand. I'm not talking about putting former IRA terrorists in there. I'm saying you have members of the Irish Defence Force in there.
Okay, if Sinn Féin comes to power, they were formerly an extension of the IRA, and they hold.
Well,
the same
ideally, these would be under the
basis.
UN. These people would be under. These would be blue helmets. These would be blue helmets.
That's never
ideally.
changed anything. Korea was fought under blue helmets. Didn't stop it from being a horrendously brutal Western imperialist war.
Well, maybe the North shouldn't have invaded, but that's my opinion. But what you don't think the blue helmets can be trusted?
Once again, this is
do you not?
like
Do you not?
back and forth
Wait, so
policy.
you don't trust the blue helmets? So wait. So you don't trust the blue helmets, but you do trust
That's
the
not what I
Iranians?
said. That's not what I said.
I mean, sure, the blue helmets commit
What
horrendous
I
acts.
said was that the blue helmets
at
don't
times.
fill the same country, right? Americans go in blue helmets all the time, and it doesn't stop them from being assholes.
No, but I'm saying that they will be answering to those hierarchies rather than their own national ones, right? But I guess if you don't think the Irish can be trusted with it either because
No,
they're like
that's not what I
angry or
said.
whatever,
No,
then
once
like maybe
again,
fill it up with
please,
Swedes.
Actually, this actually does make me want to tear my eyes out. You did not understand the point, and you've misstated it again. I did
No,
not.
I know what you're saying. You're thinking that the Irish will side with the Arabs because
Not what I
of
said.
past IRA sympathies.
No.
Okay, then what were you saying?
What I
Make
was
it clear.
saying is that if your argument is that we have to exclude anyone with ideological, biases or supports, right? Because somehow Iran has to be excluded from this conflict they're imminently related to because they have, God forbid, a position on it, then you would also have to exclude the Irish. That's not I don't think we have to exclude anyone with ideological leanings because everyone in this world has ideological leanings. America has really strong ideological leanings towards Israel because of evangelical Christians that support Israel for horrendous religious reasons, right? Like we could
Are there legitimate reasons to support Israel?
There
Like
are.
someone has
there
the
are also
audacity to be
legitimate-
Jewish?
there are also from the Iranian side legitimate sides to not legitimate reasons to not support it. But if we're talking about biases and we're talking about ideologies of governments, right? The American government has what is clearly and unequivocally at least partially religiously motivated reason to support Israel that has been historically documented and consistently supported, right? So if we're going to exclude people that are biased because of religion or because of ethnicity or because of affinity from this conflict, I actually don't think you're going to find a single person in this world that doesn't have it, right?
Sure, but you can pick what I would say are more steady hands.
Sorry, but one second. Much less are you going to get it from the West, right? We could maybe talk about getting it from like I think South Africa is actually pretty strong on this. They don't have a real reason to be involved in this conflict other than being decolonial, right? Their actual cultural relations with either of these people groups is very little. So I would actually not be bothered with Israel becoming a South African trustee state and, the Palestinians becoming, like, I don't know, we could make it China, we could make it Vietnam. Vietnam wouldn't be bad. Make it some country that actually doesn't have a view on this. But when you say you trust the West, right? The West, and argue it because of, like, because, like, they have less ideology, that's not true. And the only reason you seem to trust the West, once again, when you tear down the, like, things you're saying, it seems to just because they are like you, or you trust them more because they are white. Like, I don't understand what this is coming from.
Well, of course I trust countries that value democracy and liberalism more. Of course I trust them more. The South Africans would be I could see the South Africans working out. The issue is if they have the capacity materially to do it. Can they garrison those soldiers? Can they pay for it? Can they station troops there?
What did you mean when the West has more? You said the West. In what world does the West have better foreign policy here?
Wait, better foreign policy or better capacity to be able to do it? Because I said capacity. Better foreign policy is that the West, of all of the major, you could say blocks, the West seems to be the most sympathetic to democracy than any of the other ones.
In what world? In what way are they sympathetic to democracy and foreign policy?
Well, aiding the Ukrainian war effort, for one thing.
Okay, for one thing, go on.
Okay, Ukraine, Taiwan.
Taiwan?
If you're... Taiwan,
Is
yes.
Taiwan literally run by corporations right now?
Taiwan has been a democracy since the 80s now. Don't mess with that Beijing propaganda.
Kind of, right? But if we look on democratic levels, the Western imperialism has not increased democracy in Taiwan.
If you're you think Taiwan is just as undemocratic as China? Is that what you're saying? I don't actually know what you mean by that.
I mean, regarding like personal self-determination, yeah, because of how strongly they rely on American aid. Yeah.
No, I think that Western influence has helped to keep Taiwan safe for democracy.
Yeah, but it's also extraordinarily limited the amount of domestic and foreign policies that they can have. Like, sure, they're voting on some things, but also, is it Taiwan or Hong Kong that has corporations sitting? I think it's Hong Kong. Corporations having seats in government.
Yeah, that's Hong Kong, and that's also not really our circus anymore.
Hypothetically. Yeah. Functional.
Let me be very clear. I think the British were much better at running Hong Kong than the Chinese are, obviously.
Probably. I probably agree with Hong Kong. Taiwan's a horrible example, but if we go through, like, regarding foreign policy,
Taiwan is far more democratic than China. No. You're not getting away with that. You're not getting away with that. You're not getting away with that bullshit with me. Taiwan is absolutely more democratic than China.
That wasn't the claim that I made.
You're just
what I said was that the Western imperial influence on Taiwan has greatly reduced.
Protected it.
Well, you can say protected it. We also protected the Mujahideen. We also protected, a huge series of people. We protected Venezuela from the dirty socialists. We protected Iran from those socialists taking over their.
Well, I don't think those were all beneficial. We can talk about the Mujahideen if you want. The Mujahideen is actually very fascinating because the Mujahideen included socialists. The Mujahideen was a very broad group, by the way. It included many people. And in fact, the Taliban, was actually founded in Pakistani refugee camps by refugees. So they were not the principal fighting force of the Mujahideen.
And just so they were, and it's also irrelevant to the point I was making.
I just want to avoid any possible misconceptions because I know those misconceptions.
Then when
can
I
be
say
quite
a
common.
misconception, address it. But don't waste your breath on this.
So when you're concerning how we protected the Mujahideen, in the sense that we, provided them arms.
When we engaged in an active proxy war, yeah.
Yes, when we engaged in an active proxy war against an imperial power that was invading a sovereign nation. That I will say was unprudent because, I don't think we shouldn't get involved in that sort of thing. But nonetheless, the Soviet invasion was illegal.
The democratically elected leader in Iran was justified and protecting democracy?
No, that wasn't justified. I don't think that all American foreign policy actions were justified, but I'm not going to pretend. Sorry?
What about when we did that in Honduras
Why do you think I think that's justified?
or in Nicaragua?
Why do you think I think that's
I
justified?
was asking a question. Did I say you did?
I think that it's undemocratic, and that was
What about when we did it in
a bad
Venezuela?
policy. Like I said, I think it was a bad policy.
Okay, what about Chile?
Again, bad policy.
Argentina?
Bad policy.
Paraguay?
Bad policy.
Belize?
What's your point here?
My point is that you said that you made the actually insane claim that the West has a higher propensity towards democracy.
Do you think that
in their
Ukraine
foreign
is
policy.
just
Shush.
as undemocratic as
You asked me a
Russia?
question. You asked me a question. Let me answer it. You claimed that the West somehow has a propensity towards democracy in their foreign
More than the
policy.
Russians and more than the
Shush, can you
Chinese
stop
and more than the
speaking, brother?
Arabs.
Stop interrupting me. I
I'm
was
just
trying
telling
to get
the
through
truth.
one sentence. Stop speaking. What?
I'm just telling you the truth. The
Stop
Western
telling me.
powers
Start
are
listening.
more democratic than the Russians
No,
or the
I know- I
Chinese
know
or
you
the
said it.
Arabs.
You asked me a question. Do you think it's fair that you let me answer?
Sure, answer.
And do that. That's what I expect, right? That's the baseline expectation for a conversation. So you said you made an absolutely insane claim. Also, your mic is like really bad. Can you stop moving it around?
I'll just mute.
Okay. What I was saying is that you made the absolutely insane claim that the West has some type of propensity towards democracy in their foreign policy. And that's insane, right? The vast majority of American foreign policy has been consistently to undermine democracy towards, like, you know, imperialist economic goals. We can talk about comparisons between this, but you don't see that widespread imperialist imperialist foreign policy from every bloc. You just don't. That's just not what you see. When you see with third world blocs engaging in foreign policy, you see a much more diplomatic, much more respectful of democracy bloc from that. If you think the Arabs are the example, we could talk about Arabs acting independently, but they haven't been an independent power bloc, like, basically ever. Iran as an independent power bloc has not been able to influence many countries to the point of stabilizing and creating proxy states. China does not engage, actively does not engage in undermining other democratically elected governments nearly to the extent that America was. I don't actually know that you'd be able to point me to an example of a given country that China has undermined outside of its territory. We can talk about Tibet and we can talk about its
Cambodia.
western regions. Cambodia, what government did it undermine actively in Cambodia? Because I mean,
The
America set up
arresting of
the
dissidents, the arresting of
Democrat.
dissidents the arresting of critics in Cambodia of China, the arresting of dissidents in Cambodia.
Oh, did it undermine a democratic country, a democratically elected leader?
Oh, well, they do have literal spies in the Australian Parliament.
I mean, we have spies. We have the most widespread intelligence network in the world. What democratically elected leader or country did they undermine?
Did they undermine the Canadian government, the Australian government, the Cambodian government?
Did any of those leaders go away? Did it change the government?
They influenced policy with their
I mean, America. Okay, cool.
assets.
We assassinate leaders.
Sure.
Which one seems like a larger influence on democracy?
Sure, the U.S.
Okay, so why do you believe that the U.S. is more pro-democracy than, for example, China, who doesn't actively
they-
undermine a series of democratic?
They do undermine, though. You can't deny that they undermine.
Not
You
to
can't
anywhere
claim
near
that the
the
Chinese
extent.
are somehow
Not to anywhere near the
pro-democracy.
extent. But you said
That's ridiculous.
We're talking about extents here.
That's ridiculous
talking about extents
pro-Beijing
here.
propaganda.
You couldn't name me
And
a
I do
single
think that if the
country
Chinese had the same material capacity as the United States, they absolutely would. They absolutely would. To try to say that the Chinese are just as democratic as the United States, or more democratic,
in foreign
God forbid,
policy.
is ridiculous. Same thing with the Russians. Do you think the Russians care about democracy? They have their
That
own
wasn't the
propped
claim.
up
You misstated me.
dictatorships.
Stop lying about what I
They
said.
have their own propped up dictatorships. I
Stop
know,
lying
because
about what I said.
you admit it, you being pro Moscow doesn't play well.
That's not what I said. I don't like liars. Don't lie about what I said.
But the Chinese,
No, correct
the Chinese,
yourself.
I would say, are more
You said
sensible than the
incorrectly and correct
Russians.
yourself. Don't lie on my channel. What did I actually say?
You tried to imply that somehow the
What did
Russians
I
and the
actually
Chinese
say?
were less hostile to democracy than the United States.
In what capacity?
in their foreign policy, which just isn't true.
There we
Which
are.
just isn't true. The
I mean,
Chinese
I
and the
actually
Russians,
provided you evidence. Can you provide me evidence showing the opposite?
the Russians
No, regarding China. You brought
regarding
up the
China,
Russians.
sure, their regular infiltration of democratic countries. They have their own. They have spies in
Can you
Canada.
name
They have
something that they
spies.
did that America hasn't done, and to a larger extent, America hasn't done?
Probably not now. Though I also generally
No,
prefer
0 times out
Western.
of 10, and not at
Well,
all.
that's fortunately because I don't think the Chinese can do it yet.
I mean, the, their comparative economic wealth is like quite strong, like quite close. It's 18 trillion to 25 trillion.
I mean, if you think the
Right.
Chinese are above murder, then I don't know what to tell you.
That's not what I said. But when you were talking about the data that we do have about their propensity towards democracy within foreign policy, there is no way in hell you can argue to me that the Western Bloc is more pro-democracy in foreign policy
They
than,
absolutely
for example,
are. We absolutely are. To say that we
you're just
haven't, to say that
wrong.
we have no interest in democracy in
That's not
Ukraine,
what
to
I
say that we
said.
have
Oh my
no
goodness, are
interest.
you incapable of breathing without lying?
Calm down, calm down. You don't have to go full Putinist,
No,
Putinist
no.
on me
Did you
yet.
say? Don't lie. Correct yourself.
You're a Putinist.
Correct yourself,
You're
or
a
I will kick you.
Putinist. You're a Putinist.
What was the lie that you just said? And correct yourself.
I don't. It's not a lie because I believe it. I
It's,
believe you're
well,
a
did I?
Putinist.
So did I ever say that America has no propensity towards democracy?
No, I just
Then
believe you're
don't
a
suggest.
Putinist.
Sorry, but you
To
said
say that we
to say
have
this,
this, you said
to
of
say
the other
that to say
powers,
this.
the implication
Correct
which would
yourself. What
include
did you say
Russia.
that was incorrect? Am I a Putinist?
I don't know. Are you? I think you are.
You don't know, then don't claim it.
I think you are. I believe you are.
Okay, then say I believe you're a Putinist.
I believe that you support Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
I don't.
All right. So, yeah, Putin.
Also, you lied. You lied about me, and I want you to correct the lie. I never said America has no
I was,
propensity to democracy.
I was incorrect to call him a Putinist. I was
No, no, no.
wrong.
That wasn't the lie that I was calling out. Forgetting that one, you said to say that America has no propensity for democracy. I never said that. Correct?
You said that we had less than the Russians and the Chinese.
I didn't say
and
that about the
Arabs.
Russians. Incorrect.
So we have less than the Chinese, but more than the Russians.
I just want you to correctly cite what I said. Did I say that about the Russians?
You said it very broadly, so I wasn't sure who you were referring to. You just said other
What
blocks.
did I say very broadly?
That the West is not more democratically inclined than the other blocks.
Then all other blocks was what I said.
Okay, yeah, and that would include Russia, wouldn't it?
No, not necessarily. You don't know how that selective phrasing works. But you didn't
Well,
let
then
me
be
finish the
more
actual.
clear. Be more
Sorry,
clear the next
Will, you
time.
need to learn to stop speaking because the reason that you've misquoted me multiple times is because you interrupted me before I finished the statement. That's why it's vague, is because I wasn't able to finish the clause that I was working on. So before you lie about me, maybe let me make the statement first. Understand?
All right, go ahead.
I mean, I've said it now. To say that America is more pro-democracy in foreign policy than all other blocs in the world is idiotic and like insane. There's no way in the world you would say that. Especially if you look at the like third world country bloc or the non-aligned movement bloc.
The third world, like Rwanda.
Not really Rwanda. I would look at the non-alignment movement. Do you know the composition of the non-alignment movement bloc?
Sure, yeah. What about it? The one that includes Modi, Modi, a fascist? I don't really care what he has to
Sorry.
say.
In terms of foreign policy regarding India, historically, they've undermined countries around them, right?
Indeed,
quite
they have.
extensively.
And they
But
hang
when we're
Muslims
talking
from
on an
trees.
when we're talking on an international scale,
And they
right?
rape nuns. So I don't really find them to be all that sympathetic.
I'm not trying to. I
I
don't
certainly
like.
don't find Modi sympathetic.
I don't like Xi Jinping. I don't. Okay. Do I need to do this? You're pulling like the most idiotic rhetoric I've ever heard. I don't like Biden. I don't like Trump. I don't like Modi. I don't like Putin. I don't like
Yes,
Xi
yes, you're a
Jinping.
great centrist. You're a great centrist. I don't
I'm
really
not
care.
a centrist. I'm not a centrist, right? But you need to actually take my words and stop trying to like get clips out of this. I don't like any of these people. If you say I like any of them or support any of them or apologizing for any of them, you are lying.
Well, you
Stop
are
lying.
apologizing for Xi. You are
I
apologizing
wasn't
for him.
apologizing for Xi.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
In what way?
Let's be realistic about this. Denying the fact that China has any propensity for undermining democracy in its
That's
surrounding
not what I
countries, whether
said.
they be the
That's
Philippines,
not what
whether
I
they be
said.
in Cambodia,
That's not
whether
what
it be
I
in
said.
Australia
That's not
or
what I
New
said.
Zealand.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's not.
Could you correct
No,
yourself?
no.
What did I actually say
Yeah,
about
I
China?
don't trust.
Could
I
you
don't
correct
trust countries
yourself?
outside
No.
of the
Could you
Western
correct
Bloc.
yourself?
I don't
What did I
trust them as
actually
much.
say about China?
You implied that they were more sympathetic to democracy than Americans were.
I didn't imply that I said that. Does that mean that I believe that they have?
It means I think that you're wrong and that you can't understand
Okay,
the
but when
realities
you
of the
when you
world.
quote me as saying that China has no foreign policy that undermines democracy, that is a lie, correct?
Sure.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Oh no. Anyways,
Y'all, if you don't follow me already, please do. I really like, guys, if you've watched me for a while, um, there's one thing I do not like. There's one thing I don't like. Who is that one type of person that I really don't like? There's one type of person I really don't like. There's really about it. It's about it. It's the only type of person I don't like. Thank you. Okay, let's let this guy up, and then I will probably have to leave in the next 20 minutes.
What's up,
Hello.
bro? How you doing?
Doing real well. What'd you send a guest request to disagree on?
The only really thing that I disagree with you on, I mean, I'm not like a pro Biden or pro Trump. I would vote for Trump over Biden, but I don't really care about that. More the pro Palestine thing.
Sure, yeah. What's your position on it?
I'm pro peace, to be honest with you, but
I mean, same.
I don't like to classify it as pro Palestine or pro Israel. But I kind of want to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, so at the very least, I'm pro-Palestinian liberation. So when we talk about pro-peace, when people say they're pro-peace, it typically presupposes the status quo. And presupposes that if everyone just stopped shooting each other, right, everything would be fine.
No, I don't want the status quo. I don't want the status quo.
Yeah, the status quo of maybe 8 months ago or, a year ago or something like that. It's
No, I
typically-
know. I agree. We can agree on that.
Yeah, I don't want that. I need fundamental institutional shifts such that apartheid ends, violence ends, structural violence and discrimination end, ending in a one-state solution. And I'm pro-Palestine because currently the Palestinian and the Palestinian nation's rights to self-determination are being violated. So I'm going to fight for the oppressed peoples.
Okay, so I agree with you that they should be able to have their own state. They've had multiple chances in history for that. That's a different topic.
None an equitable fair offer.
I mean, that's by your standards.
That's by international law standards, but
The UN's the one who created that initially, right? That's the first
Which?
chance. That's the first chance they had.
The partition plan was unequivocally not equitable. That's by my
I
standards.
can
We can
agree.
argue about the partition plan. The partition plan was not equitable. I don't think anyone
I can
claims
agree. And
Sorry.
I could justify. No, you don't be sorry. You're good. I could justify them like whatever you can call 1948 a war that happened. I could justify that, sure, but they lost the war. In all reality,
Losing a war doesn't get rid of your rights, or doesn't actually lose you anything. The fact that you're less strong doesn't change your obligations or rights.
no. When you lose a war, it definitely changes what happened, like what it looks like after.
It doesn't change your rights. The fact
I
that the
agree.
Native
So
Americans lost the war against the
Pa-
Americans doesn't mean
the
that they lost the rights to their
Palestinians-
land.
Sure, the Palestinians who stayed, they have the same rights. They're in Israel right now. The ones who were told to flee by the
That's
surround.
historically not accurate. I mean, there are hundreds of human rights violation claims that are just not strongly disagree with that. We can talk about Druze communities. We could talk any number of communities that have been actively denied rights in Israel.
What right are they denied?
What right are they denied within Israel? Depends
Yeah.
what you're considering Israel. So if you consider West
Proper.
Bank, which is occupied by
No,
Israel,
not the
currently,
West Bank, not the West Bank.
you're talking Israel proper.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Palestinians are denied the same rights to return as Jewish people are in Israel. So Jewish immigrants into Israel have a greater right to return for their children and themselves than Palestinian holders of an Israeli passport.
But they still live there. They're not.
Also, so that's a right. They also are demonstrably institutionally denied the right to self-determination under the nationality law that was passed in the past 10 years. That stated that Jewish people within Israel have the right to self-determination exclusively.
But they reside there with the same rights, though. Their rights
They
aren't
don't have the right to
compromised.
self-determination according to the nationality law that was passed in Israel. Non-Jewish Israelis do not have the right to self-determination.
Okay, sure. But I'm saying as far as they're not discriminated against in terms
That's
of.
discrimination. When you are denied rights, that is discrimination.
Okay, we can agree to disagree on that. That's not
I
even.
don't know how you disagree with it. Do you not know of the existence of the nationality law?
Like you could speak to Arab Israelis who live there
So
themselves.
you have no substance for what you're saying, and I do. I quoted you to
Will, you're not
the. I
hearing me
told
out.
you the rights.
I know people who live there who are not Jewish. You could speak to them yourself. They don't.
I mean,
think
do you know what the
you-
nationality law is in
They-
Israel?
They don't agree with what you're saying. So you're speaking off third-hand
That's fine,
experience.
and
I'm
pretty
telling
much
you-
every human rights lawyer in the world agrees with what I'm saying.
I'm
But
telling
as
you
I've
off
said,
first-hand
right,
experience.
there are laws on the books that are discriminatory towards non-Jewish Israelis.
Okay, and I'm telling you on first-hand experience, they don't experience an apartheid.
It's actually secondhand experience. And
No,
I could tell you,
they're firsthand.
but this isn't the contest. I've told you the laws. I don't care what laymen in Israel think. I'm telling you what the laws are.
Okay.
The only way you
So
can
let's just
encounter
talk
the
about
source
how
is
to-
if you bring me,
let's just
show me
talk
how
about-
these laws are not discriminatory.
Let's talk about how to get to peace then. And
No, let's talk about the absentee property law. How is that not discriminatory?
what's the absentee property law?
Which is that property owned by Palestinians who have an Israeli passport or an Israeli citizenship, if they are absent for a certain amount of time, or if they have been expelled at a certain amount of time, Jewish Israelis can claim that, but Palestinians cannot.
Okay, I don't support that. Sure,
Is that discriminatory?
I don't support that. I don't think it's discriminatory. I think
You
it's
don't think
terrible.
it's discriminatory? How is it not discriminatory?
I'm saying in proper Israel. You wanted.
That's in
you
Israel
extended
proper,
it
brother.
to- Okay, so then I do not support that. Sure,
Is it discriminatory?
sure, you can say that.
Okay. Is there discriminatory laws against the Palestinians within Israel proper?
To an extent, but you have to understand the history.
Okay, so now you have to understand the history as to why they're racist.
With Palestinians that have always resisted and don't want peace. Yes. You
Do
have
I need to understand the history for any other racism of the world?
Of course.
Give me an example.
All throughout that region, there's.
Great. Give me an example
you
of
think it's just-
racism that you think is acceptable because I understand the history.
Okay, so when the Jews revolted in 1943 or 4, I forgot what it was, in the Warsaw Revolution against the Nazis, that was quote unquote. You can call it racism.
How would you call it racism?
You can call it racism if you
But
want.
how you said this is an example of racism that I need to understand the history of to justify it. How is that justified? That's not racism.
I'm not justifying their law. I'm just telling you the history
Okay,
that
so
is
you
more
think that
complex than
law
what you know.
it is discriminatory. It is against Palestinians. So Palestinians living in Israel don't have all the same rights as Jewish people living in Israel. Yeah.
If they abide by, if they're not, I don't know how to explain it. I don't live there, but I know the experiences of other people, and they don't think the
You're
same way
wrong.
you
The
do.
laws disagree with you.
Okay, sure. How do we get to peace?
Well, you get rid of discriminatory and racist practices across the board. That's the first level. The first
Okay.
level to peace is you stop having institutionally racist, institutionally apartheid policies.
Okay, so but what about the? Would you
Number
agree
one.
that? Would you no? Would you agree that the radical mindset in Gaza is also stopping us from getting to peace?
No.
Okay, so you think the oppression created the
Oppression breeds radicalism. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's the other way around. I think radicalism created.
That's
the-
insane.
Okay, that's your opinion, and I have my opinion.
Historically, you're categorically wrong.
Okay,
Right.
So
I
when did
mean-
let's see how much you know about this conflict if you really want to speak about it. Like when
Talk
do you,
about what?
this conflict? I'm saying in specific regards to this conflict, the blockade on Gaza, the quote unquote oppression, is because of the radicalism. It's not because of
That's fascinating.
it's just the facts.
That's really, really interesting. Wait, who funded Hamas in the 1980s?
It has nothing to do with where we are now.
Well, no, we're talking about what bred the radicalism. Who literally bred the radicalism in Gaza?
They didn't fund them to do that. They didn't give them weapons.
They actually explicitly did fund them to be because they were jihadist groups.
They didn't fund them to fight Israel.
No, they funded them to be
You're
extremists. You're confusing extremism with violence. Hamas, which was a portion of the Muslim Brotherhood, was funded by the Gaza Brigade General. According to him, he's quoted as saying this, to counteract the secular PLO. So they were funded to be extremists. So who bred this extremism?
Definitely, like you're switching the narrative like crazy. By the way, you think
How? I'm talking
you
about
think
where
I'm
the
just
extremism
referring-
came from.
You think I'm just referring to only H group? I'm talking about.
No, I'm not. I'm just giving you a really strong example. So let's talk about the current extremist group that is running Gaza right now, Hamas. Who literally bred them? Who funded them in their creation?
That's more. So what's your hypothesis that Israel funded H group?
I mean, the Brigade General of Gaza said that they did. So yeah,
And they indoctrinated them with all these ideologies too.
they didn't have to. They were members of the Muslim Brotherhood. They were extremists, and they were funded by Israel to counteract the PLO. It's as simple as that.
Okay, so I don't agree with you, but sure.
I don't know how you don't agree with like a fact that is stated and cited and well known.
You're acting like Israel like basically created the H group's charter, which is like just like.
I'm not saying they could. No, that's not what I'm saying. What
I
did I
don't know what
actually
you're
say?
saying. Here.
Then ask me for clarification.
Okay, so what are you saying?
Okay, so I'm saying that Israel funded the Muslim Brotherhood, which later became the H group, but were jihadists at the time, explicitly to counteract the growing PLO power in Gaza.
Okay.
So they bred the extremists.
No one likes the PLO now. What's okay?
So Israel funded and bred the extremists
When did they fund them? What year?
in the 1980s.
Okay. How much? What did they fund them for? What was their purpose?
At that time, they were a charity, but they explicitly funded them to breed them into a political counterbalance to the PLO, which were secular, semi-leftists.
No. What did Israel say they're funding them for?
They said they were funding them to counteract the PLO.
Okay, but by violent resistance, is that what they said they're going to fund them for?
No, they said they were building a political alternative to the PLO.
So then it's not their fault for that their intentions are not for violent intentions.
They were extremists at the time. They said they were extremists at the time. You're confusing extremists with violence.
So show me that they said they
Muddying
wanted.
the waters. The Brigade General of Gaza at the time said that they did this.
Okay, Brigade General of Gaza. Okay. I'm just making sure what you're saying is even making any sense. Like I already know they funded the Muslim Brotherhood, but you're insinuating that they wanted to perpetrate violence out of it, which is
Oh,
just
that's
like,
not what I'm saying. No. Stop. Take the words that I'm saying. At the time, they were a charity. They were a jihadist, extremist Islamist charity.
who?
The Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay. Yeah, no one supports them, and Israel supports
Who
them.
later became Hamas.
Okay.
At the time, they were extremists.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure. The fact
They
that
were not violent, but they were extremists. Do you know the difference?
Sure.
Okay. So
Well, actually,
Israel
what
funded them to be a political alternative.
Tell me
to-
what an extremist who doesn't commit violence looks like, so I can understand.
The Buddha, like lots of people have been extremists. The Buddha called himself an extremist. Gandhi was an extremist. Extremist is merely a person in relation to the Overton window that falls well outside of it.
Okay. Go ahead.
So they were Islamists. They believed that the government should be run by Islam for Islam of Islam in a Arab solidarity society.
Okay.
Extremists. They were well-known extremists. And Israel funded them to be an extremist alternative to the comparatively secular leftist PLO.
Okay, sure. What's your
So
point?
who supported the extremism in Gaza?
They don't support them anymore. Now, and they haven't
Who
supported them.
bred and supported the extremism in Gaza?
Have they supported them since?
Who bred and supported the extremism in Gaza?
Have they supported them since, though?
Answer my question.
They didn't know who they would create. So what's your point?
They didn't know who they were. They were extremists at the time.
But they weren't radical,
We're radical.
violent individuals.
But we're not talking about violence. We're talking about extremism. Do you want to change the conversation?
No, radical violence. That's what they are now.
But we're talking about
are you
extremism.
denying-
said,
are you denying-
You said the violence and the extremism breed the oppression. I'm talking about the extremism. We can talk about the violence, but talking about the extremism, the oppression clearly bred the extremism.
Sure. So let me just clarify. The violence bred the oppression. Okay. Let's take the extreme. If you want to just like make it like this, the
Oh, I
violence.
don't
bred the
think the
oppression.
violence of the oppressed create the oppression. That's insane.
No,
There'd be
that-
no reason for them to be violent without the oppression. What are they violent
they've
against?
historically never wanted peace. They've never wanted a two-state solution.
That's not true. That's categorically not true. They did want peace. The Palestinian Congress offered Jews the right to vote within the Congress in 1947.
That's what they were. There wasn't a Palestinian state at that time. What are you talking about?
There was a Palestinian Congress. It was a separate organization.
It doesn't matter.
In the same
That's when
way-
Zionism was
in the
getting.
same way that there was the Irgun and the Haganah.
I said they were okay. You know what about the Irgun?
I'm saying in the same way there were the Irgun and the Haganah, there were Jewish organizations, there were Palestinian organizations that would have become a government had it taken full sovereignty of the state.
Sure.
And they ended up doing it.
It wasn't the Palestinians' choice if they wanted the whole state or not. It wasn't to act like it was their choice.
That's not what I'm saying. The Arab Palestinian Congress offered the Jews the rights to vote in the effort to a one-state solution prior to the partition plan.
Okay, and the Jews didn't want. They wanted their own state.
Yes.
Exactly. And so, and everyone agreed.
The Palestinians
And
did
hold
want
on,
peace.
Will.
The Jews were the ones. Sorry, the Palestinians did.
No,
They
Will,
offered peace to the Jews.
They wanted their own state, and the other Palestinians have their own state as well. Don't change the narrative, okay? The
What do you
British.
mean? Don't
Wait,
say-
hold on. The
don't know
British.
changing the narrative.
The British, the UN, everyone agreed. Everyone agreed. Like the
Not
only.
everyone agreed. Famously, a lot of people disagreed.
Okay, who? Other than the surrounding Arab countries that waged war and
That's
lost.
I believe the surrounding Arab countries are arguably the most important shareholders in this
Yeah,
discussion.
the ones who lost the war, outnumbered 4-1. Yeah, those guys.
Does losing a war lose you rights?
When Israel accepts a partition plan that is peaceful, so people can both exist side by side.
If I go in and colonize your area, take all your shit, kick you out,
That's not what happened.
and then say, "Look, I'll stop stealing shit from you now if you don't attack me."
That's not. They migrated over and they purchased land legally. Don't just change.
That is a complete revisionist history.
Okay, sure.
They
You don't.
violently. What did the Irgun was famous for violently.
When was the
illegally
Irgun
taking.
created?
The Irgun was created in the early 30s, early 30s.
A little later. Why were they created?
They were created, quote unquote, to defend Jewish settlers, but
Against-
they were created
yeah.
following the British.
Exactly.
neglect.
Exactly. Thank you. They were created against the British because the British stopped
They were not created
immigration.
unilaterally against the
They were,
British.
they
That's
were,
not-
that was their prominent role because the British stopped immigration.
not-
You're not listening. You're not listening to Palestine. They stopped immigration. They limited it with the white papers.
Yeah, along with the rest of the world. Yeah.
With what from the what
Along
and
with the rest of the world, yes.
during the worst time of Jewish persecution. That's when they did that. So that's why.
You very well could have taken in those migrants.
What'd you say?
They very well could have. Britain themselves could have very well taken in those migrants.
But they
It should
did.
have been the Palestinians' choice.
They
if
did. They pitted the Palestinians and the Zionists against each other. Whatever you want to call it.
I don't doubt that.
Okay. Perfect. And then they lost the war.
It doesn't make what you said true. Jewish settlers and mass Zionist transitions did steal massive swaths of land from Palestinians consistently. Throughout pretty much from the very beginning, right, of Israel's foundation, so from the late 1910s, so 1918 was the first mass settlements. Up until now, they still are in the West Bank. They just
I
certified.
just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying they came in, they kicked people out of their homes without purchasing them,
Yes.
and during this time,
They
right?
did do some purchasing. There's room for nuance here.
No,
They
no,
did
no,
do
wait,
some-
Will. You're saying they came and no, don't change it now. You're saying they came and they colonized the land and they kicked people out. Can you please point to one settlement in one city where they did that so I can find that? Because I've never heard of that in my life.
And they famously did it in Hebron.
No, they did it. They did it during the leading up to the war in 1948. Yes, but you're saying in the early 1910s. You just don't know what you're talking about. So
I think
point
they famously did it in Hebron.
point to the settlement. Point to the city
They
where they
famously
did.
did it in Ramallah.
Okay, let me look. So in Ramallah, in the West Bank. What year did they do this?
I mean, they started transitioning. So they transitioned into Tel Aviv, one of the earliest points. Whatever the previous name of Tel Aviv was, I'm forgetting. I believe that was the first some of the first illegal seizures.
Okay, just point me to your source where I could find that they kicked out a bunch of
It's
people.
taught me nothing of value or substance. So no, I'm not going to go into Wikipedia and find you the first article.
Oh, it's
If
Wikipedia.
you want
What
to
do
do
you
your own
mean?
research, that's fine. You
I
have
know
absolutely
for a
nothing.
fact that Jews came over and purchased his land along with them being.
No, once again, they did purchase land,
Yes.
but they also did violently expel hundreds of people.
Yes, later.
No, from the very beginning.
Okay, so I'd love to look into that, but you're not allowing me. You're not okay. I'll look into that on my own. If I can find anything next time we speak, maybe we could.
Great, then go do that. I have to leave because my office is about to close.
Yeah.
Enjoy that.
I'm just letting you know. Every single Palestinian I've spoken to, they say
You've spoken to no Palestinians. All right. No, I just have to go home. But love you all. I'm gonna go home. But follow me if you don't follow me already. Follow my Instagram. I'm posting on Instagram. Click the link in the Instagram. That would be great. I would appreciate you forever. I hopefully will be going live around like now-ish times most days. That's my goal. If I can get work done early enough, that would be great. Great. I love you all. Follow me. Please do go follow my Instagram. It'd mean so much. It's linked in my bio. Wills.talks. All right. Bye. Love you all.